Hey Laura, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. This is exciting.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm really excited to talk to you today about Instagram and kind of how you've used your Instagram to grow your store. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, are you in the classroom? What's your specialization? How did you get started with Teachers Pay Teachers and kind of in this teacher author world?
Yeah, so I am a primary teacher. So I've taught kindergarten, first grade for 10 years, which is like really crazy when I say that. It makes me feel really old. And my specialty is classroom community and classroom management. That's sort of my niche. And I am not in the classroom right now. I had a baby in August, my first one. And
Congratulations.
so, yeah, I'm home with him this year, which has been a big change, but it's been really wonderful. And so I'm sort of, experimenting with Teachers Pay Teachers more full time now. Well, as full time as you can when you have a baby at home. But I do miss the classroom. So I don't know what's going to happen for me in the future. But I actually did not start out as a teacher seller. I had my Instagram first. And I started it when we all went in lockdown in 2020 and we were teaching from home, and I was just feeling really disconnected from the teacher community. And so I started my Instagram, and I actually started a blog at the same time,
Oh, neat.
just to sort of connect with teachers and share ideas. And then it wasn't until almost a year later, of after people would say like, "Oh, is this on TPT?" I would share something and I was like, I should probably just start a Teachers Pay Teacher store. And
Yeah.
so, but then I kind of got addicted to that sort of like feeling of, you see a teacher use your resource, you get a good review, and it just feels so good to know that something you created for your classroom is being used by other teachers all over the world. And it's like such a cool thing. And so, yeah, it's just kind of grown from there. It's been fun.
I love that. So there are people who start for sure, with the Instagram and then they kind of move over into the TPT world. But I feel like for the most part, it's kind of the opposite. Right? Like most people kind of start with their business and then try to look for ways to grow it. I'm really excited to talk to you because you have more of an organic story from how you started. And in fact, we were sitting down together, we were on a call, and I was looking at your store and I saw she's got more followers than she does feedback. And that was kind of when I sat down with you, I was like, that audience is coming from somewhere. And so I like pulled out my phone and I was like, oh, she's on Instagram. Like that's what it is. And it was so obvious to me from just looking at your TPT store that you have a lot of true fans. You have a lot of people who really enjoy what you do and they really believe in what you're doing, which is really incredible. So how did you go about back in 2020? You're feeling that disconnect. And from that point of just starting your Instagram to now where you have how many followers do you have?
I think it's like 47,000 or something. I'm like almost at that 50,000 mark, but
Yeah.
not quite there yet.
Yeah. How did you get there? How did you go about building your audience and how did you get people to find you?
Instagram is such a roller coaster. And I think that the people who have success with it are the people who just stay consistent and who keep going, because it's easy to feel like, oh, so and so just started their Instagram account and they're already blowing up. But the truth is, most people just have to keep at it for a while. And I've even seen so many examples just in the past 6 months of people I've followed for a long time and their accounts have just started taking off.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like Instagram was a really slow burn at the beginning. Like I think I sat around 1,000 followers for like almost the first year. And that was right around when Reels started becoming really
Mm.
popular. And so I think I just got brave and sort of experimenting with things and figuring out what my audience resonated with, because it is different for every audience. And I feel like one of the fun things about the Teachergram space is that everyone kind of gets to create their own Teachergram persona and sort of like what they can offer to the teacher community. And so for me, I discovered making these like relatable teacher reels was great for me. That was great for building my audience, for people getting to know me and like me. And I think that is a big piece of being on Instagram as a teacher, is like staying relatable, which can be harder when you're out of the classroom. We can talk about that a little bit later. And then the other thing that worked really well in growing my audience was finding what could go viral in terms of still images that were very savable and shareable. So that could be just like an anchor chart idea. It's usually very simple things that people could just do themselves, but they just say, oh yeah, I'll save that for later. Or like, oh, I
Yeah.
like that. But It has been sort of like slow burn, slow growth. And then all of a sudden it'll be like, oh my gosh, massive growth overnight from just like one or two posts, and then slow. So it's a bit of a roller coaster. You just kind of
Yeah.
got to stick it out sometimes.
Yeah, but I love that. The first year, you're saying that you stuck at the same spot. So it wasn't like you put in all this work at the beginning and you immediately saw the return on investment. This was a slow process. So let's talk about the type of content that you create, because you spent the first year not having a TPT store. And so it wasn't like you were sending them off to go and purchase items that you had created. Do you find that now that you do have a TPT store, that it's a little bit harder to create that organic content that you created in the beginning? Maybe you're like, hey, what's my angle? Which is probably a big part of why I don't enjoy Instagram, because it wasn't working for me. It's probably why it wasn't working. Is that a struggle for you to like try to separate the two and make sure that you have a good balance with your content?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I probably don't follow it perfectly, but that's sort of like 80/20 rule you hear all the time, or like 80% you're just providing value, you're just providing tips and ideas and inspiration and things that they could just do on their own without making a purchase. And then 20% of the time you are showing a product, showcasing something. But sometimes you can sort of mix the two together. And that's sort of where I've had the most success, I would say, where you are offering up a problem to it, offering up a solution to a problem, and it has things that they could do on their own, or they could just buy your product and it would solve that problem for them. And so I think that is where a lot of struggles can come, is like in the messaging, sort of like, what's my angle? Like, I don't think that's a bad question to be asking. I think that's a really smart question to be asking. But I think that keeping up with that sort of just like value content, even if it's just entertainment, right? These past few weeks, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I haven't been like putting in the amount of effort into my Instagram. Like, I really need to just switch it up. And so I made this trending reel with a teacher spin on it, and it did so well for me. And people might say, well, that's just vanity metrics. Like, what does that do? But it's getting more eyes on you. It's building that like trust factor and teaching the Instagram algorithm that people like to look at your stuff.
Yeah.
So it is valuable to create content that has nothing to do with something that you're selling if it's going to build a connection with your audience.
Yeah. I want to ask a follow-up question to that, because I think what you're saying is true, but I want to ask a clarifying question maybe. So if we're talking about creating content that has nothing to do with your angle or what you're selling or your specific niche, which in your case is elementary classroom community, right? That stepping outside of that niche for you, is that creating content that is just teacher related, or is it creating content that has nothing to do with education and it's like your favorite recipe that you made on a Saturday?
Right. No, you definitely got to stay within your niche, and so you can sort of think of it in that idea of like content pillars. So if I want to put some stuff that's just about being a teacher, sort of like hashtag teacher life kind of thing. And then I'm creating some things that are just like classroom community tips. So that's very within my niche, but it's not showing a product, right? It's just saying like, here are 3 things you should do to get ready for the beginning of school, or 3 ways to de-escalate a student who's having a hard time, just like straight up tips. Reels are so good for doing that kind of thing. And then I have sharing ideas that have a resource with them. That might be my third content pillar. And so you're kind of like pulling from that. But I will sometimes try something new just to see how it goes, right? Like maybe I'll post a little meme and see if people like that. So you have to sort of experiment, but you also have to keep doing what's working.
Yeah.
So if you have success with something, ask yourself, how can I recreate that in a different way? And it is different, like some people have really good success just like posting a picture of themselves in a cute outfit in front of their classroom. And that was never something that worked for me. Like, it had to have a little more value in there for my audience to go for that.
But I'm sure that for those people who are doing that, you've got a like to know it, or you're kind of more teacher influencer, that's probably really handy. And I'm sure their audience really enjoys that. But yeah, same here. There was no way I could do outfit of the day Instagram posts. It just didn't fit in with what my audience was looking for. So let's talk about collaborations, because I know that there are a lot of people who have really big Instagram audiences whose Instagram audiences are not engaged. that like they're using it to drive traffic and it's not working, but they have 50 to 150,000 people following them on Instagram, but it's basically pointless followers or, wasted followers because they're not engaged at all. And what I found from working with some of these people is that a lot of times what they'll do is they'll be a part of those giant, collaborative giveaways, and they're getting all kinds of people who are not in their niche and things like that. But I do know that collaborations can be extremely powerful. Have you ever done a successful collaboration or participated in a successful collaboration to grow your Instagram account?
Yeah. And I think that was one of the ways that I successfully grew at the beginning, especially when I had like just a couple thousand followers. If you can, I think that you want to steer clear for sure of those ones that are like giving away a Cricut and a printer and an iPad, because I get messages from those places all the time, like teacher dream giveaway or whatever.
Yeah.
We'd love for you to be a part of it. And you're just going to get a bunch of ghost followers from that, people who are just interested in maybe winning and aren't interested in your account. I'm very selective about what kind of collaborations I'm a part of. And a lot of times I'll organize them myself, because I know who I want to collaborate with. And so I'll choose people. What I would do in the past is choose people who just had like a slightly bigger following than me. And people, I would build a relationship with them before I reached out. I would make sure I was following them and I was commenting on them and, chatting with them in the DM, so that I wasn't just this random person trying to then do a giveaway with them. And so I just did one actually last week with just 5 or 6 of us. And I think they all had slightly bigger audiences than me, but we kind of had chatted with each other. And so I think when I had fewer followers, that was a great way to kind of like boost my following and get new people. And I would always choose people that were K1 too, and preferably teachers pay teacher sellers who had a kind of account that I felt was close to mine, or that I was maybe trying to emulate, or that I admired in some way. But now I don't get like thousands of new followers, but I do get a little influx of engagement. And it's just a way to kind of like boost my account. And I can then capitalize on that by, posting something that I want more eyes on, or using that to kind of like re-engage my audience, do like a bunch of question and answers and stories, or post a freebie that I think people will really like. And so that's kind of how I've been using collaborations now. I do have on my list to try to do an email list collaboration at some point this year, which will be new for me. But that's a lot harder because you can't look at someone's Instagram account and know what their email list is like.
Yeah.
So that'll be an adventure. But I'm going to try to do that.
Well, at least if they're on Instagram, then you can see they could drive traffic from Instagram to the email, they could do something like that. And then at least they've got that audience. But so that's encouraging to hear. When we're talking about these collaborations that you're doing, are we talking about like the influencer, like go follow these 4 or 5 people and slide this bar? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's kind of the trend right now. Like a year or 2 ago, it would be more like a post and story, and it would be like, comment, and share this post. But now the slider ones are really what's working well. And they're great too, because anytime you have engagement within your story, like someone slides or someone responds to your poll or something, that tells Instagram that they like your account, and they'll show your stories and your stuff to them more often. So it is kind of like built-in engagement in your stories that way too. So that's kind of the most basic kind, but that is also the kind I've had the most success with in terms of collaborating with other people.
Neat. Okay. Well, that's really good to know. Now, many sellers really struggle with getting their audience, like they have an existing audience on Instagram. These are people who are commenting, they're liking, they're engaging with their content. They're even asking for links sometimes, but then whenever they're making their posts or whenever they're advertising their TPT products, they're really struggling with getting them to actually make it over to their TPT store and purchase a product. Have you experienced this struggle? And why do you think that they're experiencing this struggle, or what has been a reason that you have experienced this struggle in the past? Or what's been the cause of this struggle?
Yeah, I think a lot of times as TPT sellers, we have to switch our mindset when it comes to Instagram. And so like the beautiful product photography or video preview that we made for Teachers Pay Teachers is just not going to work the same way. It's not going to convert on Instagram. And so you have to kind of almost like start with an idea of a problem to solve or a tip to give, and then think like, how can I work my product into this? I'll just give an example. Last week, I did a reel that was 5 social skills you should be teaching your student. And it was like setting boundaries, conflict resolution, self-regulation, some other things that I can't remember. It was just a reel, and I went through those 5 things and I showed a little craft or anchor chart for each one. Now, I happen to have a social skills curriculum product, right? But I'm giving value just by telling teachers, like, these are things that will really help if you go over with these students, and showing them a little visual of something that they could probably easily replicate on their own if they wanted to. And then, see caption for details. And then I use the caption to go more in depth about the product. So I'm just getting already, the people who are interested in it in the caption. And then, in the caption, I'll say, like, if you want, I've got the social skills curriculum, grab it from my bio or comment for the link, right? And I just started doing that comment for the link thing this past year. And I cannot believe the number of people who don't want to go click over to your bio. Like, they just want you to DM them the link. I was like flabbergasted the first time I did that, how many people would comment wanting the link. And so I think that too, just making it as easy as possible for people to get over to your Teachers Pay Teacher store. And it's great to get into people's DMs, right? Because that shows Instagram, again, I have a relationship with this person. You should show them my stuff. And I think that's a really good opportunity to build up these repeat buyers, because they ask for the link, you give it to them in a DM. They see a different reel, they ask for the link. Now you have this DM conversation going, and I'll notice sometimes, like, oh wow, like this is like the third or fourth link this person has asked for from me. And so that's been a successful way that I've gotten more people to actually get over to my store to buy. I think another thing is that sometimes I see sellers on Instagram and they're showcasing a huge product, or they're showcasing a product in like all these different ways, like a video preview kind of. And it's just overwhelming. That's not why people go to Instagram. If people wanted to like look for products, they'd be on Teachers Pay Teachers. But if people just share a single photograph, that's in a beautiful classroom of just their like little like grammar craft. I just saw one of those the other day and it was like super popular. People love this little grammar craft, right? And then she says in the comments, like, if you want the link, like this is in my TPT store. And so I think showing small pieces that people could replicate on their own, but you'll get a portion of people who just want to buy the template. And so I think that was helpful for me too, because I used to do that too. I used to lay out all the pieces of this bundle and take a beautiful photo, and it would be like cricket.
But if I chose just one piece, like just a picture of like this cute crown that's part of it, then people were much more likely to save that for later, to send it to a colleague, to ask for details. And so those are just little things that I've learned along the way in terms of what audiences respond to more. And I'll also see what's working for other people, right? There are quite a few sellers who do this very well. And so I'll save one of their reels and say, oh, I want to try to recreate this later with my product, like maybe a similar hook or using the audio that they used, but putting my own spin on it. So that can be helpful too, just looking for inspiration from other teacher sellers who are like really doing a great job showcasing their stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like from what you're saying, what I'm taking away from this goes back to something that you were talking about in the beginning, that 80-20 rule of 80% providing value. And if you start with how can I provide value to my audience? And then from there, figuring out a way to incorporate your products and make that a part of the value that you're already providing, that you're going to be in a much better spot than if you start from, okay, here's the product I want to promote. Now, how can I make it look like I'm giving them something valuable while actually just trying to market my product?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do sometimes start with the product and then like try to brainstorm ways, but I think that it's always better to approach it from like what kind of value is this going to give? What could someone take away from this without purchasing?
I love that. You talked about some strategies that have worked for you when driving traffic to TPT in terms of like asking them to comment for the link or something like that. Have you noticed any particular type of content that tends to do better? Reels, carousels, stories, in terms of its ability to actually get the traffic to your TPT store?
I think Reels has probably been the most successful in terms of people commenting and asking for a link, but still images actually do really well for me. And that's because I try to make it as beautiful as possible. Like my setup, like I have a filter I use on my whole Instagram, so it's very branded. Even though I'm at home now, I made a beautiful bulletin board on one of my walls for product photography so that it looks like it's in a classroom, because that makes a big difference. People want to see it in their classroom. And so having a beautiful setup, or if I'm showing a craft, I put markers and scissors and things around it and colored paper to make it just look really pleasing, because Instagram still is like a very visual platform. And I think it matters to be aesthetically pleasing and to have good lighting and all of that. And so those still photos, if I do them correctly, those can be the most successful, I think, because they're the easiest to digest, right? People don't have to watch a whole reel. They just kind of see it. It catches their eye. They save it for later, or they go ahead and comment for the link if it's something that they really like. So those are the two I've had the most success with. Carousels, not really. Videos, not really. Stories to a certain extent, but there are some teachers who put in a lot more effort into their stories, and so probably have like higher story views than I do. That's just something that's been really hard for me to stay consistent with, especially now that I'm home with a baby. I don't have a classroom to like share all the time. That's been a struggle for sure. But I think that finding what works for your account and for your audience is really important. And then just kind of like running with that and seeing, okay, how can I do another one of those, but with something new?
So you kind of mentioned it earlier, and then you just mentioned it again now, like being at home and not being in the classroom anymore, kind of that having an impact on the kind of content that you're creating, or the ease in which the content kind of comes to you. How have you kind of overcome that hurdle a little bit? Does your audience know that you're out of the classroom, or what's kind of the situation with that?
It's definitely harder in terms of like coming up with content and staying sort of like relatable, I guess. But I think some of my audience knows. I don't keep it a secret, like in my stories, I talk about it, and someone asks me, I answer the question, but I still try to just show up as a teacher mentor. That's kind of what I try to show up as. My little bulletin board that I made has been hugely helpful. I had someone DM me the other day saying like, oh, how is it being back in the classroom? And I'm like, oh, I'm not. And she's like, oh, but your beautiful bulletin board I saw. And so I was like, great, it's doing its job.
Yeah.
So I can still show up in a way that makes it look like I'm in a classroom and I'm giving advice, or I'm sharing content. And sometimes I'll repost things. I'll dive back into my archives, see what did well at this time of year, even in my stories, see like, okay, what was I sharing in my stories this time of year? I can share that again, be like, this is an idea that I love to use at this time of the year. So I really try to make sure that my stories stay a mix of kind of classroom content and, mom life content, so that I'm not abandoning that teacher side. But it is hard. I have to do a lot more like planning and like brainstorming of what I'm going to post. I have to be more creative with coming up with ideas, when in the classroom, it's like, you're doing so much all the time. It's like, oh, I could share this. Oh, I could share that. So it's taken a little more thought and planning, I think.
So what's next for you in terms of your TPT business, your Instagram? Like, what's next for you as a business owner?
Yeah, what a great question. Well, I feel like I'm really sort of like diving into my Teachers Pay Teacher store a lot more, and just sort of like seeing what can happen from that. And I really love product creation, and it's been such a nice outlet to have, being home as a mom, to have this sort of creative education-based thing that I'm still doing, because I do miss the classroom. I do miss teaching. So, but for now, I really want to focus on my Teachers Pay Teacher store and see what can come from that. I'm definitely going to stay on Instagram. And, I feel like I've put so much effort into it now. I want to like keep up with it, even if it's a little bit harder right now being out of the classroom. I'm excited to see what happens next.
Well, I'm excited for you. And I thank you so much for coming on today and for talking about Instagram. We've had Instagram experts on here in the past, and they're incredible. They're absolutely amazing. But I think sometimes it's really nice to hear from someone who isn't selling a course or selling a membership or anything like that, just speaking about your experience and success in this form of marketing. And I'm so glad that you came on to talk about this. Tell us, where can listeners find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, definitely Instagram is the best place.
Yeah.
My Instagram handle is LoveGrowsLearning. And that's also my blog too, LoveGrowsLearning.com. But Instagram is where I hang out. So come say hi. I would love that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Laura.
Yeah, thank you.
You definitely want to make sure that you are following Laura on Instagram at LoveGrowsLearning. You can find a link to her Instagram down inside of the description so that you can check out her incredible content and see how she markets her TPT store through her Instagram. And I know that she would love to connect with you on there as well. If you want to learn more about Instagram marketing, we have Melody Munch from Mrs. Munch's Munchkins. She's going to be at the Teacher Seller Summit talking about being an influencer on Instagram, not only growing your Instagram audience, but also how to sell to them, things other than just TPT resources. And I absolutely cannot wait for Melody's session. So make sure that you're signed up to get notified when tickets go on sale for Teacher Seller Summit. That is going to be July 6th through the 9th, but tickets are going to go on sale April 1st, and you do not want to miss that. You can find the link to that down inside the description. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and subscribe. I put out weekly content for teacher entrepreneurs, helping you grow your business in a way that's purposeful and sustainable. And I am so glad that you're here. I will see you in the next video.